Hi, and welcome to our kitchen. My name is Chef Roman Longoria. I'm with the San Antonio Food Bank, and today we're gonna be making a healthy soup inspired by Mexican cuisine, mushroom pozole, using seasonal ingredients. So, let's cook. So today I'm gonna be using a ancho chili and a guajillo chili. These are gonna add a lot of flavor to our soup, but how do I cook these? How do I use a dried chili? So first we've gotta prepare our chilies. You've got the stem and the pod. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to tear into these pods. And as I tear into these pods, I'm gonna be showing a lot of seeds and veins inside these pods. I wanna get those out because those are gonna make my dish very bitter. So I'm going to remove these seeds, flipping out, scraping out my chili pods, removing any kind of veins till I get a nice clean shell. And then it's the same process that I'm gonna be using for the guajillo chili. Just splitting it through. Do this with your hands, you can do it with chilies. You might wanna wear gloves. So I'm just removing all my seeds, my stems, so I get an empty pod. Now the recipe we're using is gonna be using 4 of each chilies, but right now I'm just gonna go ahead and use the 2 so we can go through this process together. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my pan to a nice medium heat. So I'm gonna take my chilies, stack them together, fold them up, almost like we're doing a chiffonade. I'm gonna take my knife, making sure I have my hand in my claw so I don't cut my fingertips, and I'm just gonna kind of rough chop these chilies through. It's gonna take a little bit of force because they are dried, but I just wanna get them nice and chopped up and ready for my pan. So the process I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna be darkening the flavors of these chilies. I'm gonna make them a little really flavorful. I'm gonna be popping the flavor of the chili, so I'm gonna add a little bit of canola oil to my pan. Just a touch of canola oil. And I'm gonna wait for my pan to get a little hot. Make sure that my chilies are gonna saute really nice so I can develop more of that flavor. So I'm gonna take my chilies and I'm gonna add them to the pan. So once I get these sauteing, they're getting nice and hot, I don't wanna let them burn. I'm gonna get a little bit of my water here, moving my chilies around. You can see a lot of these are just popping. The smells are coming out, but I've got to rehydrate these chilies. I need these chilies to turn them into a paste because the paste is going to be the key flavor component in our pozole today. I'm gonna add my water and I'm gonna let these kind of boil out because I want to get them soft. And I've got some chilies already pre-prepared. And I'm gonna be putting them into my blender to create the paste that I'm gonna be using for the base of my mushroom pozole. Put those in. And there we go. So what I have in here, I have a bowl and a strainer. Because it's not always guaranteed that my blender is always going to puree everything I needed to puree, and I don't want any big chunks of chilies in my soup. So I'm gonna be putting this through a strainer, and I'm just gonna push it through. Push it through my strainer, get my paste out. And like I said, this chili paste is the base for our soup. It's gonna be giving us a lot of that heat that smokiness that we're looking for in our traditional pozoles. And there we go. I have a little bit left behind, and what's left behind is any seeds, any veins or skin that I have left inside. And there we go. Now I have my paste. Now it's time to make my soup. So I'm gonna get this pan up to a medium-high heat. I've got my pan hot. I'm gonna be adding a little bit of canola oil to the bottom of my pan. And I'm gonna add my chopped onions first. Nice hot pan. Get those onions started. What I'm doing and why I'm starting my onions first is because I want to bring some more depth of flavor to my soup. I want to caramelize the onions, which means I'm going to cook the natural sugars that are found in the onions to bring that depth of flavor that I'm looking for. This is going to take a few minutes, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes on a low heat, maybe a little shorter with a higher heat. It smells really good. It's gonna add a really nice flavor to my soup. And I just wanna see a little bit of color. Okay, now that I've spent a little bit of time with my onions, they're getting some nice good color on them. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the rest of my ingredients. I'm gonna add my mushrooms next. So I've added my mushrooms and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna bring a little bit of color, so I heat them up a little bit, sweat out some of the natural moisture that's inside them. And the great thing that we do for the mushrooms in this dish, it's kind of like that meatiness. It's that texture, that meatiness, the one that's gonna give the brunt of its texture is coming from these mushrooms. So I wanna make sure I cook them down, make sure that they meld with those flavors of the onions. And next, I'm gonna be adding hominy. Corn right now is in season. Hominy is a derivative of corn. It comes from corn. So I'm gonna be adding that next. Bringing those some together. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start with my spices. I'm gonna add my garlic powder, my onion powder, touch of oregano. Toss those around. Now I'm gonna add my water for my soup base. Now, if you prefer to add like a vegetable broth, you're more than welcome to do so at this time, but water works just as well because we're gonna get a lot of flavor from our spices and from our chili paste blends. I'm gonna add also a couple of bay leaves, and all of these additions are just gonna add another layer of flavor to my soup. Now I'm going to add that chili paste that we made earlier today, strained, nice and smooth, and that's gonna give me that smokiness. It's gonna give me a little bit of heat, and all of those flavors that we traditionally get when we eat pozole. All my ingredients are added to my bowl, and I'm gonna try to bring this up to a boil, cut down to a simmer, and let it simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes, because I really want all the flavors to permeate inside all of my ingredients. I want those mushrooms to taste good, I want those onions to taste good, I want that hominy to absorb flavor as well. So about 10, bring it up to a boil, cut it down to a simmer, and then just let it go for a little bit. So my mushroom pozole now has been simmering, the flavors have been melding. Really now time to serve and taste our creation. So I'm gonna take our bowl and I'm gonna serve out my pozole with those mushrooms and onions, that chili paste, the hominy. So now I have my delicious mushroom pozole. Now the great thing about pozole is the toppings. I wanna make these flavors pop. I wanna taste that chili, I wanna taste those onions. So I'm gonna be using some flavor enhancers. I'm gonna be using a little bit of black pepper, just a little touch more spice. I have some chopped romaine lettuce. That's gonna add a nice crisp flavor to my soup. I'm And of course, you have to have just some extra chopped onions for a little bit of crunch, some spice, some nice fresh crisp radishes. That's gonna add a nice crisp texture and a little bit of a peppery flavor to my soup. And since I don't wanna just hit the salt shaker, I'm gonna be using citrus. I'm gonna be using some fresh lime to add a contrast to the chilies and the peppers and everything else I used in this soup to pop that flavor so I don't need to grab that salt shaker. And everybody's favorite part is the taste test. Let's see how we did today. You can really tell all the different flavors I put in there. I have the smokiness from the chilies coming, I have that sharpness from the onions. I can even taste a little bit of that bay leaf that I put in there to let simmer and add a depth of flavor. So that's it, mushroom pozole. I hope each one of y'all try our recipes, and I look forward to seeing y'all again in our next healthy recipe on Let's Cook.